Before we begin, these are the first few things let's clarify. Number one, what we expect of you, what you should know in order to be able to understand this tutorial. You have to know the basics of programming: loops, conditions, what is a function module, what is a class, just basics. And also, if you can do select statements on a database, if you know what they are, joins, inner join, outer join, that'll be awesome. Now, what is SAP programming? Well, SAP programming is done with a language called abap, A-B-A-P. So most of the SAP programs can be summarized like this. First, you select the data saved in SAP databases, and then you bring it to memory, change the data using some business logic, and in the end, you display it on the screen or into a file. If you display it onto the screen, it's called ALV report. If you display the data on a web page, it's called WebDynPro, Fury. If you display it on a PDF or a printout, it's called SmartForms. You can also display it in a file. The file can be accessed using FTP, or you can actually send the extracted data in HTTP packets and then send it on the wire. It's called EDI. Also, you can also write the whole logic. Instead of having a standalone program, you can write it in modules, which is in turn will be used by other programs. So we'll get into details of these. Now, let's go to some of the words you'll hear all the time when people talk about SAP. There's nothing complicated, very simple. One thing you'll hear is object. What is an object? Well, whatever you develop as a developer in SAP are objects. Be it reports, we spoke about report. What are reports? You might make web pages, you might make SmartForms, which are PDFs, a program to write CSV, etc., etc. They're all objects. Transactions, that's another word you'll hear. So everything you do in SAP is through a transaction. For example, you have these development transactions. A developer uses them to create new objects. I will show you in a bit. Let me quickly show you what I'm talking about. This is the SAP GUI screen, which you'll be seeing a lot. So I log into SAP, and once I log in, this is a transaction. Every transaction is a number. This is a transaction where you'll create programs. White test, you can change it, display it. These are all transactions. Okay, so these transactions are development transactions. Also have functional transactions. Actually, functional transactions is once you develop something, sometimes, most of the times, SAP has developed something, right? And then others will use those transactions to do day-to-day activities. They'll create sales orders, purchase orders. These are business terms. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it or not, but by the end of this course you will be. So every such activity generates some permanent data on the database. At the end of the transaction, some data must be stored in a database. Otherwise, it's pointless, right? You did everything; it has to be stored in a database. Then you say, okay, the transaction is done, and document the result of a transaction. Usually, ends up creating a document. Document is nothing but a collection of useful data or useful stuff, basically. A sales order is a document, a purchase order is a document, a bill is a document, an invoice is a document. Naming convention. All the objects, the things you develop are case insensitive, right? But your code is case insensitive. But the stuff you store in a database, they're case sensitive. Of course, if you store something in a database with a capital all caps, is different than if you store it as all small. That you need to remember when you're doing select statements. Whatever you and I develop has to start with Z or Y. Whatever SAP develops, they put whatever they want. But just to distinguish between your work and SAP's work, you have these distinction. Also, it's not a rule, but it's a convention. If you create something with Z, that means it is meant to be shared with other people, and then eventually it will be used by, will move to the production system from the development system, and everyone will use it. If you want to create something test, locally, not show to anyone, just your stuff, make it start with Y. Let's quickly go to the, how do you actually do a setup? In this slide, you have all these links. Click on the link, you'll download this SAP GUI. Okay, this is only if you don't find it, email me. I need to have .NET on it. Also, installing SAP on your local machine is, although SAP lets you do it, it's a very tedious process. In fact, you need SAP Server now. I mean Windows Server now. Windows 7, 8 doesn't work anymore. So it's such a pain. I just decided to buy it from these guys. This is the link here. Only $8 a month. You can skip a lunch. You're eating too much anyway. Skip a lunch, buy it. $8 a month. Very useful. Also, this installation doesn't let you create your own, because even though when you install the GUI, you need to tell it where the server is, right? But this one doesn't let you, for security reasons, doesn't let you create your own link to that backend server for some reason, so that maybe people who don't know what they're doing, they cannot modify it. So we have a workaround. You download the file, put the file in this location, and boom. If you put that, this thing gets created automatically when you restart the software. Close and open again. This one is the link to the one I just told you here, SAP Server Access. So if you buy from someone else, they'll tell you where the link is, what their IP address is, etc., etc. Accordingly, the file you downloaded needs to be modified with that IP address or on those credentials. So here, it's another thing I'm saying. Sometimes it's very tiring to put username and password all the time. You might forget and you get locked. So in that case, you can, once you log in once, you can just click here and you can save your password. Create shortcut, save your password. Okay, that will never lock yourself out. You'll never put wrong password. Okay, and before that though, before you can save the password, you have to download this file and double click on it. This is a registry file which bypasses a security measure where you cannot store your password. You're the only one who has access to your computer, right? Nobody will see this password. Don't worry about it, just do it. Now, I've also, this is a file, .list file. I put a list of all these useful transactions. Remember how I actually typed the transaction name? This might be, some people are lazy, they may not want to type it all the time. They want to save these transactions here. You can do an insert transaction, you can save the transaction, insert transaction. So what I've done is I've compiled a list of all useful transactions. You can just upload it, and then you get all these useful transactions, things we'll be using for this tutorial. Now this is an important part. Once you're done with the initial setup, here comes the first understanding slide. We'll actually move this thing to the next video. We'll talk about it in the next video. See you in a bit.